One of the things I love about traveling is being exposed to new experiences and new people. And recently I was staying in an Airbnb here in Barcelona as part of my Swedish winter escape to a warmer destination. And while I was staying in this Airbnb, I met some really cool people that were living there. And in the room that I was staying, there was a bookshelf with maybe 10 books on the shelf. And out of the books on that shelf, I had read 9 out of the 10, and those 9 books that I had read are some of my all-time favorite books. Books like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Think and Grow Rich. If you're into these kinds of books, you guys get the idea. So I figured because all the books on the shelf I really enjoyed, that one book that I had not read is probably really good as well, because whoever's books these are, they have very good taste in reading material. So I picked up this book as I was staying in the Airbnb, and even though I was only at this location for a week, I read through this entire book in just like a few days because it was such a good book. And this book was called The Obstacle Is The Way by Ryan Holiday. One day my host at the Airbnb saw me reading this book and he goes, "Hey, if you like Ryan Holiday, if you like this book, you have to check out this other book by Ryan Holiday," which I have right here, and I brought it with me to where I'm staying now. And I've been on a reading binge lately of Ryan Holiday and a lot of other of my favorite books that I've decided to reread again. And it's really been inspiring me to make some changes in my life. And I want to go over 3 ideas in these books that I've been reading recently and that I want to continue to take with me. Now is a perfect example of the first point I want to make. Sometimes obstacles can get in your way. For example, here is my filming setup. And when I started this video, it was extremely cloudy out, which meant that the lighting on my face was one way. And then the sun came out, which meant that the shot when I started was gonna look completely different. Also, there's a guy that's like practicing and learning how to play the drums upstairs, which doesn't sound very good. But because there was obstacles and challenges put in my way, I've decided to make a little segment like this. Instead of letting this obstacle get me down, I figured why not try to turn this into something interesting to illustrate the point of this video by changing up the camera angle and not letting it bother me too much. I'm also using this microphone right here so that you don't pick up the noise. You probably can't even tell that there's a drummer up there. I think it's fair to say that we all have problems in our lives, or if our lives are going perfectly well right now, you're probably gonna have some problems that you're gonna need to deal with in the future. And the biggest takeaway that I had from reading The Obstacle Is The Way can be summarized in this quote: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we choose to respond to what happens to us. So even though this is a very small example, now when you see that the light might be changing in the background because there's clouds and there's sun, there's clouds and there's sun, instead of thinking, wow, this video looks very unprofessional, you're gonna see that it's actually me trying to take this obstacle and using that segment in the beginning to show you that I'm still gonna power through and turn that weakness into a strong suit of this video. Now I know this is sort of a small and silly example, but I think this is the right kind of mindset for dealing with problems and adversity in life. Take a more lifelike example. Maybe you're going through a difficult breakup. You might be feeling a lot of negativity, a lot of emotions, you might be feeling sad, but you can try to turn it around, try to make this weakness, try to make this adversity, this obstacle, the way forward. Think about all the extra time now you're gonna have to develop yourself, to work on your own goals. Think about all the other potential partners out there that you're now gonna have the opportunity to explore and meet somebody new. And by packaging these problems and looking at it as a way forward, I think is a great way to have more positive outcomes in your life. And I don't wanna like sound preachy or like pretend that I have everything figured out, because I definitely don't. These are just the ideas that I wanna start to implement and incorporate into my life going forward, and if you find some value in it, maybe you would like to as well. Now let's move on to this book that I have with me right now, Stillness Is The Key, because I learned some really interesting things in this book that I definitely want to incorporate into my life. And the first thing I want to talk about here for this point is the power of letting go. I've always been a person that is like really, when I know that I want something, I go after it. And I have a hard time sometimes of just letting life naturally happen around me. Sometimes I try to impose my will and force something, and it seems like the more that you strive for something or the more that you try to force something, the harder it becomes. Definitely I've noticed this with relationships. If I'm really interested in somebody and I pursue them a lot, they start to run away and it becomes like this chase. Whereas if I just relax and I be myself, that energy that I want just seems to naturally come into my life. I think instead of focusing on the outcome that I want to focus more on the process and enjoying the process. For example, these YouTube videos that I'm making for you guys. I used to be so caught up in, oh, I need to have a certain number of views. I need my channel to be growing a certain amount. I was so focused on the outcome all the time instead of making content that was like enjoyable and fulfilling for me. And if instead I'm just focusing on the process instead of the goal, I'm ultimately going to be more inspired and sharing content that's going to be more inspiring for you guys in the long run because I'm more motivated and passionate about. And even if it doesn't get the same number of views or engagement in the beginning, I think over the long term, if I'm not focused about those outcomes, the outcomes will just come naturally on their own instead of me trying to force something that I'm not really feeling. Here's a quote that I read in the book that I really, really liked. Work done for reward is much lower than work done in the yoga of wisdom. Set thy heart upon thy work, but never on its reward. Work not for the reward, but never cease to do thy work. The chapter on letting go was very, very interesting for me in this book. The great archery master Ewa Kenzo did not focus on teaching technical mastery of the bow. He instead spent almost no time instructing his students on how to deliberately aim and shoot. He preferred instead to teach his students an important mental skill: detachment. What stands in your way is that you have too much willful will. It is this willful will, the desire to be in control and to dictate the schedule and the process of everything, that holds you back from really mastering the art you're pursuing. For sports like archery or like golf, I think this is especially true. I mean, think if you're on the golf course and you just want to smash this ball right down the middle of the fairway super hard, and you get to the ball and you just wind up fully and you really, really try hard to hit this ball as hard as possible. You're probably not gonna hit the ball very well. You have to be fluid, you have to let it happen. And when you're not thinking about trying to force it, you're actually gonna have a much, much better shot. And I think this key takeaway for me to try to implement this into my life in a practical way is instead of being focused on the objective of finding the perfect girl in the perfect relationship or building the perfect business with my YouTube channel, instead just enjoying the process of getting to know people that interest me and excite me and just being myself and finding out who I am as a person and enjoying that process and discovery, and going to the gym because I enjoy the way I feel from going to the gym instead of working on having this perfect gym body, or developing YouTube content that I find interesting and not worrying about the external factors like the number of views and subscribers that my videos are generating. I think these are all ways that I want to change my life going forward, and hopefully over the long run, it will have a very positive impact. Now, this last idea that I really want to implement into my life is actually based on multiple ideas from multiple books, because I also just recently reread Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm actually practicing my Spanish reading skills, but I also listened to the audiobook in English. And the biggest takeaway that I have from Rich Dad Poor Dad is that if you want to become wealthy, you should focus on buying assets and not liabilities. And I want to combine this idea from Rich Dad Poor Dad with a key chapter from Stillness Is The Key called Get Rid of Your Stuff. In this chapter, it talks about Epictetus and a time that he got robbed. Basically, he had some very, very valuable items in his home, and somebody took the items, and it really hurt him initially, but then he started to realize that this attachment on these things was actually holding him back. It wasn't very healthy, and he replaced some of these expensive belongings like this special lamp that he owned with a cheaper alternative which he didn't feel as attached to. And this line in the book really resonated with me. The gentleman makes things his servants. The petty man is servant to things. And I actually thought about this because I'm in Barcelona right now, and there was an instance where my phone almost got stolen. And this was a very, very scary experience for me. And it made me reflect on other things that I own in my life, whether it's expensive clothes or expensive watches or these types of things. And in a way, I actually felt like because of some of the nice things that I own, it actually would make me more fearful and worried that somebody would rob me or take them away from me. And from reading this chapter in the book, it almost seemed liberating to not have a lot of fancy, expensive things because you just have this freedom of not worrying about it. And if you can live a more simple life with the basic necessities without all the flashy things, then I think you're actually stronger because people can't take those things away from you. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with having nice things, and I have some nice things that I really enjoy. For example, my camera that I'm filming this video on right now. I have a lot of value in it personally and also from the business standpoint of taking great photos and creating great videos. But I think that there's also something to think about before I make purchases in the future. Is this something that is gonna add freedom and value to my life, or is it something that is gonna make me feel more stressed out if something were to happen to this thing? And can I live a more simple life? And can I spend more of my income buying assets that are gonna make my life easier and better in the future rather than buying things that are going to depreciate in value and that are going to cause me more stress? I'm also thinking about this in terms of how I'm living when I'm back in Stockholm. Does it make sense to have a very, very expensive rent, for example, where I have income coming in from my job and then a large portion of that just disappears every month because I enjoy living in a nice place? Or would it be better to downgrade my lifestyle that I can save more for the future so that I can spend that money instead on things that can have my money work for me in the future? And I think reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad again right now was a great reminder and a way for me to reflect on the decisions and choices that I'm making in my life and think about how that's affecting me in my long-term future. Now let's be real, this video is a lot different than the types of videos that I normally make on this channel. But for me, it was very, very fulfilling and I've enjoyed the process of making it. So if you enjoyed it, drop a like and I hope to see you in another video.